Hello everybody and welcome to another episode. So yesterday I put out the video about Halloween and how I was pretty happy with the amount of stuff we got in Halloween and how I'm kind of hoping ArenaNet can continue putting out content like that. As soon as I finished doing the video, they unveiled The Lost Shores. So for a few weeks now actually, we've been hearing about this update that's coming out in November. I wanted to do a video to let you guys know all the juicy stuff that's going on with it at the moment. If you've been keeping really up to date with things, I might not have that much left to add because we don't have too many hints at the moment, but there is certainly a lot to talk about with The Lost Shores, and I at least want to get my speculations for what will be going on out there. So first of all, we do have a quote from a dev that says that they're hoping to keep the ante up. They're hoping to have The Lost Shores will be the same size, if not larger, than the Halloween update. I'm taking that with a pinch of salt. As I said in the last video, I kind of expressed doubts that they can put out that much. I mean, especially on a monthly basis. I would love it if they could, but we do kind of hear that this November update we're going to be getting is about the same size as Halloween. Choose to be excited about that if you want, but I would take it with a pinch of salt if I were you. But this is actually going to be adding a new area to the game world that we can add. We've already seen a little bit of this. We could access a new area of Mount Maelstrom for one of the new jumping puzzles they've added, and some of the mini dungeons too, I suppose you can say, are new areas of map. So they've already done this a little bit, but basically this is the first entirely new map that they're going to be adding to Guild Wars 2. Nothing massive, don't expect another Caledon Forest, but we hear that a new, about medium to small sized map that is an island is going to be added to the game that we'll be able to access sometime in November. We do have the date of November 15th or sometime around there, so yeah, like 2 weeks before we find this. Now, if you are like me and you're doubting whether this can really be that big, I would draw your attention again to the structuring of the live team right now. There's a festival team, and those guys did all that stuff in Halloween, and they presumably didn't interact or interrupt any of the actions of the team that is now adding this new island. So in theory, it could just as well be as much content as Halloween, if not more, because we've got this new area. So there's a lot to talk about, and supposedly we're going to be getting access to this new map throughout a series of updates. Whether these are actually adding full events for us to complete and participate in, like we saw with Halloween, like the acts, how we had in Lion's Arch, there was a large meta event that was slowly charging up, and as it went past certain thresholds, more stuff was added to Halloween. Whether it will be like that for this update or something more subtle, we don't know, but there have been subtle changes already. If you go to Lion's Arch, there's been loads of little changes to Lion's Arch that hint at this new update. It reminds me an awful lot of one of the updates they did for the first game in The War in Kryta, where there was a lot of kind of cryptic stuff that was thrown out there and it was very fun to pore over. Most interestingly, they have added an Asura Gate that's deactivated for most people, but some people in some servers is actually activated and you can see it, though you can't actually walk through it. There is an Asura Gate that's been added to Lion's Arch near Portage Waypoint, so this is the area you go to catch a boat to Claw Island during your personal story. There's actually an Asura Gate that's been added there. Presumably this is what we'll travel through to get to this new update in The Lost Shores, which is very exciting to me straight away, because obviously in Lion's Arch we already have another gate hub plaza. We've got the massive area with the 5 gates we use right now, but just across from that in the centre of Lion's Arch there is another massive area full of disused Asura Gates, which I think many of us kind of think that are going to be used in the future for expansions and updates like this. But apparently it seems that this update we're soon going to get isn't worthy of those other Asura Gates that are there, so there's been another new one added at Portage Waypoint. Straight away I quite like that they've put it there, if that is how we're going to be getting to this new island, just because it spreads people out of Lion's Arch a bit more. Everything that happens in Lion's Arch is in that tiny little section. You forget how big the area is. Like, I've spent a lot of time wandering around in Lion's Arch looking for all these new things that have been dropped in the game, and the Asura Gate certainly being over there will at least encourage people to move around the damn map, actually use the world that ArenaNet have created, so that's cool. That's the first and foremost thing that you'll find. There's this Asura Gate near Portage Waypoint. In fact, the footage in the background will be me running around Lion's Arch looking at all of that stuff. I really wanted to do this video to first tell you guys everything that's been added in there, and also give my thoughts on where I think this island is that we'll be able to go to. So if you haven't seen it yet, you'll find straight away a link in the description to the official page they threw out. It doesn't offer too much information at first glance, but there have been statements from devs and interviews that we can actually expand upon to learn more about this update, in addition to the things that have been added in game. So I'll just read it out. The official page says, The Lost Shores, November 2012, something stirs in the Sea of Sorrows. Unravel a mystery of monstrous proportions in the Lost Shores, a massive one-time world event that will change Tyria forever. This is actually a really cool line, I think, and then we get 3 screenshots, that's it. And that might not seem like too much information, but this line actually, unravel a mystery of monstrous proportions in the Lost Shores, a massive one-time world event that will change Tyria forever. I think you can actually look at an awful lot of what they've said here and really drag a lot of speculation out. First of all, this last bit, an event that will change Tyria forever. don't expect anything massive. Don't expect, oh, this is going to be like when Cataclysm came out for World of Warcraft. They probably just mean by that after this one-time event happens on the weekend that this event goes out, once this has occurred, we're probably just going to be able to continue going back to this island. I've heard a little bit of misinformation going around, people saying, oh, why would ArenaNet develop this island that we can never go back to? Actually, some of this is going to be permanently remaining in the game. There's going to be an event that occurs for just a short period of time, undoubtedly, but I'm pretty sure this island will remain there forever, and I'll explain why in a little bit. So that's the first thing. Don't expect something massive that's going to change every zone and entirely open your eyes and make a new way to play the game. It's not. It's just going to be a changed world because there'll be access to new areas going forward after this event. The other thing they say, of course, is that this is a massive one-time world event. If you're not sure what they mean by that, think something along the lines of, first of all, Halloween's a nice thing to look at, because this was a large meta event. Pretty much that was a meta event that started in Act 1, didn't really do anything, it was just passively charging up until the end of Act 4, when, of course, we actually got to participate in it and play Mad King Says. But also think back, more importantly than that, probably, to the betas that we had. How did they close the betas? We had these world events, these very large events that went over massive areas. So the first time we had one that affected tons of the Wayfarer foothills, which involved us killing loads of enemies, if you remember, around there, which involved us killing tons of critters, if you remember, and then there were the giant black mowers that spawned, and servers earned score from doing it, and we were all compared our scores in the end, and there was like the giant, very dangerous rabbit, those kinds of things. That's large world events. The second beta we had Kralkatorrik corrupting the entire of the plains of Ashford, and that was really fun and awesome too. These are world events. Lastly, of course, we had their ArenaNet's take on the Hunger Games, which was also really cool with a little bit of polish. I'd love to see that come back. That was really, really quite fun. So I think we're going to be looking at something like that. And the question is, when we get this world event that will eventually come into the game, possibly preceded by lots of smaller events through smaller patches as it goes forward, where is this event going to take place? My guess would be Lion's Arch. Now, you might think, oh, it will take place on the island, but this sounds more like, the way they've worded this, a massive one-time world event that will change Tyria forever. It sounds more to me as though we're going to have a large event taking place in Lion's Arch, or some area around there, perhaps the Bloodtide Coast, perhaps Sparkfly Fen, somewhere around the Sea of Sorrows where we know this island is located. We're going to have a big world event, and when that concludes, that will be when the access to the island opens. The other nice thing about this line too is unravel a mystery of monstrous proportions. So first, unravel a mystery. I think that's already kind of beginning with all these hints that are thrown into Lion's Arch. I think these are going to be subtle events and changes that we'll be getting in the game as it ramps up, and slowly we'll piece things together until eventually we get the world event, which takes us there. But also, we've got this idea of monstrous proportions. They specifically say monstrous. I think this entire island we're going to be able to go to is going to be themed around a new world boss. Something like the Shatterer, something like the Claw of Jormag. If you already look at a lot of the hints that are in game, which I'll talk about in just a moment, they all seem to be hinting at this idea that there's some big dangerous creatures out there that are on the rampage. What is this creature? Well, that's another good question. A lot of people have been saying that maybe this new map is going to introduce us somewhat more to the Deep Sea Dragon, which is the fifth dragon that really we don't have much information about at this point. Now, that's an interesting idea to me. I wasn't actually expecting anything with the Deep Sea Dragon to come out for a really long time because, and we have had the devs say that the role that the Deep Sea Dragon kind of fills at the moment is it adds that bit of mystery, that element of not knowing what's going on, and in particular pairing that with fear. There's the fear of the waters, there are these mysterious things, there's this dangerous, powerful force we know nothing about, obscured by the depths of the ocean, and it kind of just adds that extra element to the setting of the world, and that's kind of the role that the Deep Sea Dragon's been playing. That's why we don't have a name for it even. It's supposed to be really mysterious. Now, if they did introduce us to one of the minions of the Deep Sea Dragon or give us some tangible information about it, that takes it away, and suddenly the setting is missing this aspect that ArenaNet had already put in. But then my point to that then, looking at it now that the game's come out and a lot of people are more seriously taking this idea of a sixth Elder Dragon, well then it's kind of the sixth Elder Dragon's role to now fill the shoes of the Deep Sea Dragons, in which case they could, in theory, give us some kind of large world event boss to do with the Deep Sea Dragon. Now, I'm not saying, I'm being very non-committal on this, I'm not saying either way whether this big world event boss that will get there, which again is also speculation, but I'm not saying that that will be Deep Sea Dragon, but I don't think that's outside of the realms of possibility, as I might have thought before the game came out and you told me that there was going to be a large update that gave us access to a new area so soon after launch. So that's quite interesting to me, but I do very much think that this whole map, when we get to it, is going to be themed around this idea of this world boss spawning with its own chest and unique unique rewards and so forth there. And this comes into another interesting discussion. How is the content going to be laid out on this map? We've seen that in our monthly achievements right now, we have 2 we can't access, and those are probably going to have something to do with the event, just like how for last month we couldn't finish our monthly until we'd participated in Halloween stuff. So there's going to be that, but I'm wondering, with them adding a new map, how they're going to handle things like hearts and points of interest and skill points. How are these all going to tie into things? And in particular, how does that tie into people with world completion? There's an interesting discussion here that when we get this new map, let's say they do add points of interest and skill points and renown hearts, you know, the content that we're used to experiencing in PvE in Guild Wars 2, let's say they do add that stuff, does that mean that we're now going to progress past 100% world completion? Does it mean that the island doesn't count for anything? Or does it mean that everyone who currently has 100% world completion loses their 100% until they go ahead and actually complete the new content? Now, I think there's going to be a knee-jerk reaction from people to say, oh no, I wouldn't want to lose my 100%, and people would be worried about that on behalf of all the guys that would bitch and moan and complain because they lost the 100% that they'd already earned and that they were apparently entitled to. Actually, though, I'll put myself on the line. I think, honestly, I would prefer it if they took people's 100% away until they completed the new islands, because if they don't do that, then what we're going to have in the future, particularly when we're talking about other expansions and other large regions coming out, where they're going to have people going to 102%, 103%, all the way up until it's ridiculous numbers and people have got 300% and none of it really matters. That's going to devalue this whole idea of going for map completion and having that nice little star by your name. We'd get to the point where people really don't have to make much effort. They just have to do a very vague sweep through certain maps, get just enough stuff, and because there's so many maps and they only have to get to 100%, which in truth isn't 100% anymore, they'll just get it and it will just be another thing that blends into the background. It won't be anything unique. It won't be something you build a memory out of within the game. It won't be a real reward anymore. It will just be a shiny star everyone's been given because they've played the game to a certain degree. So that's kind of my opinions on it, honestly. I wouldn't mind losing my 100%, and I think most reasonable people out there wouldn't mind that either. I think that if you do that, it helps keep this idea of having the star by your name something relevant as the game goes forward. As it stands, I could stop playing the game for 4 years, and if they never take it away but keep adding more and more maps and it gets easier, I could come back and have that star, and it wouldn't mean anything to people. It wouldn't mean that I've been participating in the content actively for the game, and it wouldn't mean I've achieved anything particularly relevant for contemporary players of the game either. So honestly, yeah, that's kind of my view with it. I think that if they're going to add more maps and things like this, that would be the way I would do it. I'd just take it away and say, look, if you want this, then you keep up to date with the game. It's a way of encouraging people to come back, and you make it meaningful. You make it worth something. And I appreciate not everyone's going to agree with that, and a lot of people will feel like, oh, well, I've earned it. I would hate to have this taken away from me. But it really wouldn't be something that gets under my skin, and it's something that I think I could continue to work towards and like. There is this other idea that they could just add different 100% tracks. So you get 100% for Tyria, and then you get 100% for Cantha, and then you get 100% for Alona or any new place they add. But then what are we going to do? We're going to have a different star for each area and then give people a star for having all the stars. But then when they add another area, you run into the same problem. Do you take away the star for all the stars at that point? You're always going to hit that cap. So that's kind of my thoughts on there. I think that they should continue to add hearts and points of interest and skill points. But I'm sure this is something they've already decided. And knowing ArenaNet, I don't think that they'd go for that idea whatsoever, to be perfectly honest. I don't think they really cater to that audience. And hey, that's fine by me. It's not a big problem. But in any case, that is something I'm curious about. How they're going to give us this new content. Are we still going to have points of interest to go for? Is there going to be such a thing as map completion for the new area that we'll be getting? I guess we'll find out in about 2 weeks. Now, a question on your mind with this new island is this going to be endgame content? The question to that is, in general, no. The update isn't aimed towards improving endgame or giving people more stuff to do at endgame. That's something that I guess a different team or a different group of people are working on, and that update, I guess, is going to be more to do with revamping the rewards from dungeons, which they've been going at for quite a while, and making those more fun to do the existing ones, rather than just adding something new that everyone else gets funneled into doing. However, having said that, despite the fact that this content isn't primarily aimed at endgame stuff, we do know for a fact that they've added a dungeon there, and this is aimed for endgame. This dungeon, though, is a little bit different to the dungeons we currently know in Guild Wars 2, in that supposedly it's really, really deep, and it gets harder and harder and harder to get through, so it's something of an endurance challenge, and perhaps not even necessarily every single group that attempts the dungeon is going to be expected to get to the bottom, and it will be a real slog, very, very difficult, but rewarding regardless whether you get to the bottom or not. So that's an idea for one of the dungeons that apparently they'll be putting in. It'll be curious to see how they implement it. I wouldn't be surprised to see that you can get to the bottom of the dungeon after a while. All the stuff they said about the dungeons that are in Guild Wars 2 before the game came out about how it was so elite, super hard content, and actually it's really easy. We had a lot of people bitching about it, but it was just because they weren't fully geared and people like to complain too early. But the dungeons actually in Guild Wars 2 are very easy at the moment. I wouldn't be surprised if the same kind of thing happened with this new dungeon, but that's the idea of it, that you can go deeper and deeper and it gets harder as you slowly descend through. So that's a nice idea, and yes, there will be some kind of end game there. I kind of compare it a lot to the Sori's Furnace update that came out for the first game, which was very similar to this. It added a new map that players could go to, a small map that also had a dungeon within it and stuff to participate and enjoy shortly after the game's launch. So I really do compare them. I think they'll be very similar, and if it's anything like the Sori's Furnace update, then it will be something a lot of people end up going to do. It might be a decision you make after a while. What do I want to do? Do I want to be an ore, or do I want to go to this new island in the Sea of Sorrows, which will be nice. I'd quite like to see that little bit of extra variety. Anyway, so all of that aside, there have been these hints in Lion's Arch, as you've been watching on the screen. The main ones are that there's been, obviously the Asura Gate's been added. There's a load of posters lying around Lion's Arch that were written in New Crichton. It's been quite a fun exercise for me actually to go around translating them. Essentially, most of them are warnings for people to stay away from the beaches because of terrible sea monsters that have started attacking things, and in particular you can see dead whales around Lion's Arch 2 now. But there's also some posters that are like vacation advertisements for some new islands, so there's a bit of a contradiction there. I guess some of them were written before others, and there are warnings generally just littered about Lion's Arch, telling people about these new threats, and on those posters you can see what appear to be big monsters. There could even be more than one world boss. I think that would be quite interesting. Aside from that, there have been 3 new ships that have been added. One of them's sunken, the other 2 are just kind of sailing around there. They have an emblem on them that everyone's been talking about. I actually think that's just a generic emblem that you could see in Bloodtide Coast since the launch of the game. It's just like a pirate or a kind of a Lion's Arch symbol. I don't think that's anything new or particularly relevant, but there is that, and in general there just seems to be some miscellaneous things that have been dotted about in some of the houses, possible changes to some of the notebooks, but I'm not sure how verified a lot of that is. But when you go, you will see these new ships, in particular you'll see the whales, you'll see the posters that have been dotted around, and this seems to be the first bunch of things that are slowly going to be trickling in to Lion's Arch to kind of teach us about what's going on with this new island. So I'll keep you all up to date with it. The update's called The Lost Shores. I'm pretty happy actually. This is very early for an entire new map. I thought we'd be waiting a while, but it really does get you looking at the map. Just for reference, my speculation of where this island is, I don't think it will be too far north. One of those islands in the Sea of Sorrow in particular was Sanctum Cay, which we know is the Dominion of Winds. I don't think this has anything to do with the Tengu or Garenhof, which is also north up there, so I don't think it'll be any of those. However, if you do look at Sparkfly Fen, there's a path that very clearly goes off into the Sea of Sorrows, but there's a landslide blocking it. That could be a great candidate for where that island is. There's a little bit of an outcropping of land there. It could be there, or it could be the island just to the south of that. Those are my speculations where it is. I'll probably circle them on the footage somewhere during this video, but only time will tell. Obviously it'll be somewhere out there. It looks very good. We've got the 3 screenshots. I'll keep you posted, as I say, guys, with all the little updates, and yeah, that's what we've got coming for us in November, in just 2 weeks time as well. This is good. This is exactly what I wanted. This is what I wanted to be covering for Guild Wars 2. I wanted plenty of updates and things that we can talk about and speculate on. Let me know what you guys think will be on the island. There will be new enemies and things. What do you think the theme is? What do you think the general story is going to be? As I say, I think it's all going to revolve around some new threat, possibly from the Deep Sea Dragon, but I'll hold my tongue on that until maybe we see some more hints to that effect. But thanks guys for watching, and I will see you tomorrow and eventually on the Lost Shores. See you next time, everyone.